All right, folks, you're listening to the Gird Up Podcast. Today's a Tuesday, so we've got an interview. This is the second part of our interview with Mr. Ed Carrow. If you didn't listen to the first part, it's a good one. He has a lot of wisdom and a lot of just good advice to share. But this one gets a little bit more into manhood. The last one was talking about business mostly. This one gets into a lot more into manhood and masculinity. He tells some great stories, some good hunting stories at the end as well. So I'm really excited to share this one with you. Before we get into it, make sure that you are following us on social media, particularly on Instagram and Facebook. You'll find us as the Gird Up Podcast, on Instagram as Gird Up _like_a_man. All that information is at the end of the podcast, so you can do that at the end. You should also join our Facebook community, the Gird Up community on Facebook. It's a great opportunity to continue to connect with brothers in Christ who are chasing after genuine masculinity just like you are. Last thing before we get started, if the Lord lays it on your heart to be a part of this podcast financially, you can do that. You can either sponsor an episode by emailing me and let me know what episode you want to sponsor and what you want your ad to sound like, or you can go on Patreon and you can be a patron of our podcast. You can either give a one-time gift or a multi-time gift. If you do so, we'll send you a little gift in return, and we'll thank you for it. Blessings on your celebration of Holy Week as we continue here. Thank you again to Mr. Ed Carroll for being with us and sharing those stories with us. I think it's a good one, and I think you'll enjoy it. We'll get into that content right after a word from our sponsor.
Hello, this is Seth and Jenna Herlick, and we are also known as Him and Her Worship.
We are also the creators of the What Do I Know podcast, where we talk about life while having very little life experience ourselves.
We are a normal couple passionate about lighting hearts on fire for Jesus, who just happened to play music.
We write our own original worship music, and we play in churches all around the country, and we'd love to connect with you.
We have lots of ways for you to do that. On Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Spotify, we are at Him and Her Worship, and we have a website, and we are himandherworship.com.
Also, check out our podcast at Apple Podcasts and other streaming platforms.
God bless you. Thanks so much for your time, and we cannot wait to meet you in person.
You are listening to the Gird Up Podcast. To gird up is an ancient way of preparing oneself for hard work or a battle ahead. Our work is to reclaim masculinity in the modern world and to live out our calling as men of God. Here you will find a community of believers working hard to become the men that God created us to be. Now it's time to roll up your sleeves and let's get to work. We're back with Mr. Ed Carrow. We talked to him last time. You own a whole bunch of hotels and development projects and things like that. So last time we were on, we talked about business. We talked a little bit about family. But let's talk about family. So you mentioned your wife. You've been married for 40 years or close to 40 years.
Just going on this August, it'll be 40 years. So
right.
Yeah,
so
amazing.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I love these stories. So I want to hear your story.
Oh boy, my story is probably not anything but boring to you. But
come on.
No, I met my bride when she was yet in high school. I knew who she was because she was going out with my best friend at the time. and
you said it would be boring.
No. But it's not where you think it's going to go. So ultimately, they did break up, and so it just turned out that the freshman year in college, this young lady Tammy was at the same place, and I said hi to her and hung out a little bit, and we enjoyed each other's company, and I got her to say yes to going on a date. So I will tell you a real quick side story. The first date, I took her out. It was a Star Wars movie, the very first Star Wars movie. Not the greatest maybe way to start a relationship, but we ended up spending time and went back to her place and about 2 a.m, and I was leaving, and I backed out of her driveway into the ditch and completely got my car stuck. So she had to go into her father and have him come out and help me. And so that was the beginning. He was not a great fan of me. I had hair down to about my shoulders at the time, and I had this red Satellite Sebring that was stuck in his ditch, but one thing led to another. We grew our relationship and ended up married very young.
Did you won him over eventually, huh?
Won him over. Now I love my in-laws and they love me, and we've had an incredible relationship with both parents on both sides.
Does he ever bring it up?
Oh, I've heard that a lot of times over the years. Yes.
I once picked a girl up on a first date, and as we're pulling out of the driveway, backed right into first of all, I couldn't find her house and showed up like 25 minutes late. Yeah, and she was the kind of girl that actually was ready on time, which really, it wasn't a good start then. And so then, as we're backing out, they lived in one of these places where the road is high and the houses are kind of down below, you know.
Sure.
And so as we're backing up the driveway, I was too busy looking at her to look into my mirrors, and crunch, like backed right up into a car across the street. And I remember just looking at her across the front seat and went, "Do you just want to go back inside?"
I can relate.
But she said no, and she went and knocked on the door of the neighbor's house, and it all turned out okay. But I felt like dirt for about 20 minutes. I was so embarrassed.
Oh, those humbling moments in our lives, right?
It reminds you who you are.
For sure.
Yeah, so I was riding that high. This girl said yes, and then oh boy.
Oh yes.
Yeah. So you guys got married really young. Are you guys about the same age?
We are. Tammy's same age as me, and we got married at 21 years old, which wow, when I look back now, thankfully my kids waited years later, and it's just challenging because you're going through learning, you're growing as a person, your whole relationship changes, and we were blessed, obviously, and to be able to look back now and have grown children and successful relationship, and that we're all focused on our Lord and connected in faith. It's such a blessing.
One of my closest friends got married about the same age, and a couple of years. So it was about a year after they got married. His wife was reading something where it said, the male brain doesn't mature until it's age 24. And she looks up from her book and she looks at him and says, "I better get to work. I've only got 2 years left."
Oh, I think mine was more like 30 though.
Fair enough. It's true for a lot of us.
I'm a slow learner.
So your daughter, you said you have 3 daughters.
Yes.
Did they come right away, or
our first daughter came about 2 years or so into our marriage, and that was certainly a blessing. But again, I look at that time, I was really not making any money to speak of. It was really tough. I had wonderful parents and wonderful in-laws that helped us out a lot, and were it not for them and all the support that they provided us, I don't know how that would have all turned out. And then it turned out as we grew that our girls were like 5 years apart. So I had 3 daughters, and so I have one about 5 years later. Nikki was our second daughter, and that also was a challenge. One of those challenges in life, in that she was born very prematurely. Ended up on a respirator in the hospital for 6 weeks. So we frankly almost lost Tammy during the birth. She had a virus, and her blood pressure went to almost nothing. The baby, Nikki, was taken and immediately had to go to a different hospital by ambulance, and I had to call pastor and try to have him come out and baptize my daughter.
Wow.
and worry about my wife, and then we went through a long time not knowing how things were going to work out, and God was good as he always is, and we were blessed with a healthy daughter, and Nikki is an incredible human being as we sit here today. And then about 5 years later, we had our third daughter, Kristen.
So after you go through that with your second daughter, are you intentionally saying like, let's try this again, or?
We actually did. Surprisingly.
I love the look of surprise on your face. Like, yeah, we did. Actually.
Yes, Kristen, you were a goal. You were part of our plan and part of God's plan.
Yeah, there we go. All right, cool. So your 3 daughters are all married.
Yes.
What do you look for in a good son-in-law?
Well, I'll tell you.
You've been singing their praises. You love them. So.
I love them, and I couldn't be more blessed. And it's not the norm. It's truly a blessing. And I look at Matt, my son-in-law, with my oldest daughter. His dad is a pastor. He's a Christian man. He wears and shares his faith. He's an incredible guy. He is a hard worker. He's a fabulous father. It just we couldn't be more blessed, and that's true across the board. So then I go to my middle daughter, and her husband is Matthew Bound, who is one of the leaders of Camp Phillip, a Christian in Wautoma, Wisconsin, that is just a blessing and a mentor to me, and lives his faith and is totally focused on ministry. It's not about things. It's about preaching and sharing and the gospel, and just you couldn't be better served than to have someone like that in our family. And the same is true then. Kristen, my youngest, marries Ryan, who is an incredible Christian from Manitowoc, Lutheran, born and raised family that has pastors. You probably heard of the Moldenauers.
Oh yeah,
and so we have 3 of the greatest son-in-laws that you could possibly have in life, and are so blessed. And we get together as a family and have times, and just knowing that faith is our foundation. And similarly, we're blessed with my parents were great people. My dad has passed. My mom has Alzheimer's now, but we had a great Christian upbringing. My in-laws are just incredible people, and just again, glue to a family that is a beautiful foundation based in God and faith.
Awesome. Do your son-in-laws hunt with you?
Nope, I'm not able to get that bug to bite with them. I'm thinking that maybe there will be a grandson come along at some point that could join me in my hunting love. But we tended up. Now we had 3 girls too, so they tended to be girly girls and very sports oriented. So between track and cross country and gymnastics and all those kind of things. But the hunting bug never bit the son-in-laws. So I have to enjoy that with some cousins and some other friends.
I don't remember who's. It was. I think it was one of the. I read a whole. I went through a stint where I was just reading like Navy SEAL books, one right after the other. And I know my military friends all roll their eyes at that, but one of them, I can't remember who. One of them was talking about, though, he has like 4 daughters, and he said, every single time he was praying for a son, and God's like, nope, you're having a daughter. And then at some point, one of his CEOs just looked at him and said, hey, God gives the real men daughters.
Yeah, my brother has 3 sons. I had 3 daughters. He reminds me all the time that I'm the weaker.
There you go. Hey, any man that can live in a house with 3 teenage daughters at one time is
and a female dog.
Ooh, and a female dog. You were surrounded, man. You were surrounded.
Yes. Not too much testosterone in the family.
So you love to hunt. Have you hunted your whole life? Or
I started as a teenager, and it really when I was in grade school, there was Lutheran Pioneers at the grade school I went to. That was my first exposure, because my dad had never done any hunting, never had guns, or didn't really do that much outdoors. And the Lutheran Pioneers was a way for fellowship, and then I got to go shooting, and I met some people. I had a grandpa that hunted a little bit, and because he saw my interest, he decided to take me out. So some of my greatest early memories of deer hunting were with my grandfather, who is a wonderful man, and he took me out and I did all the wrong things, and he was extremely patient with me. But it really, I learned to just enjoy the outdoors and just being out in God's country, and it became a lot of fun for me. So really, as a teenager, it kind of hit me, and then I had a couple of cousins that were involved in hunting, and one thing led to another. It became kind of part of my ritual. Start off with bow hunting and gun hunting for deer, and then as I got a little bit older and had a little bit more ability to do it, I did some out of state and some really big hunts, like in Alaska and Colorado and Wyoming and lots of places.
What kind of big game you shoot?
I have, let me just think. No, here it shows you how the weakness that I have. My animals are, my taxidermy's all in the garage. I've not been able to get any of that in the house.
You need a cabin up north.
Oh boy, I do. But it's one of those compromises we make. Happy wife, happy life, right?
That's right. That's right.
So I have a pronghorn antelope. I have a bunch of whitetails. I have a caribou. I have a moose. I have a wild boar. I have a buffalo. That's all that's coming to my head right now. But I've enjoyed a lot of big game hunting.
Awesome. So how do you make the leap from whitetail hunting into big game hunting?
Well, I think it's really studying and the concepts are similar, but taking that next step where you're going from fields and farm fields and ridges to mountains, and kind of having to prepare yourself for that more rigorous type of hunt. The ones that I went on were not the comfy, cozy ones, but the ones that you're out 10 days in the wilderness in a pup tent, stalking, climbing mountains, climbing big hills, and it's really just everything times X that you're normally doing in a whitetail hunt.
What drew you to the first of all, what draws you to hunting? Like why hunting?
To me, it's being out in nature. It's really not even, and as I look back now, it's not even necessarily about harvesting an animal, but it's being outside. And in the business world and I think our personal world, things are so busy all the time, and it's hard to find that quiet. And for me, when I am out in God's country, looking at those stars, or climbing a ridge, or watching the river go by, it brings a peace that I just find so amazing, and it gives me a sense for how big God's creation is, and it's exciting to me. It rejuvenates me. And certainly I enjoy the hunt as well. It's I guess I'm kind of a driven person in business and like to kind of translate that to other things, but it's really more about nature and being in God's kingdom.
Yeah. I think it's Thoreau said, many men spend their entire lives fishing and don't realize what they're looking for isn't fish.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. It's the experience. And again, it's this beautiful creation that we have.
Yeah. Do you fish?
I really don't much. I do a little bit. We have a place in Florida and I have a boat. So I go out at the time of day that I'm most comfortable with, not when the fishing charts tell me to go fish. Right. And I probably catch only the really not smart fish, but I enjoy a little bit of it, but I've not been an avid fisherman.
You gotta justify having the boat, right?
That's right. That's right.
All right. So what's your favorite hunt you've been on?
Well, I think my favorite, and I use that in terms of most memorable and probably most challenging, was one of my Alaska hunts, because I had multiple experiences that were really challenging. And I'll cut me off if I talk too much, because I love it. But we went up to Alaska, and it was an amazing journey, flying into Anchorage on a regular jet, and then taking a smaller jet to Dillingham, and then taking a fat-tired plane up to a place called Ekwok, and then taking a boat, a power boat up literally probably 50 miles upriver to a wilderness that you can't even imagine. And this was a hunt for bear and for moose and for caribou. And it was a 10-day hunt, and it rained 9, and there was heavy winds, and it was brutal. I lost 15 pounds during a 10-day hunt, which was crazy. But I don't think I ever worked so hard in my life. But there's an experience I'll share where one of the nights was up on this kind of mountain ridge, and I shot a caribou, but it was really late in the day, and so the outfitter said we have to come back tomorrow to get it. So we got up early in the morning and basically took no gear, because we had to climb a couple thousand feet and then dress this animal and bring it down to this camp where we had our pup tents in our boat. And I was climbing the mountain, and this guy, he's 20 years younger than me. He's fit as can be, living in Alaska, working hard constantly. So he's climbing, and I knew where we had to go up this mountain, and he was clearly ahead of me. So I said, you know what, I know where we're going. Why don't you go up there? I'll catch up to you. So he turns around. Huge mistake I made. He said, you know what, do you mind if I take your gun? Because he didn't have a gun. He was just carrying the things that he needed to dress the animal. And so poor decision on my part was, here's my gun. So he took it, and he goes scurrying up. And about 10 minutes later, I'm climbing my way through this brush to get up there, and all of a sudden I hear a noise. Whoo! And I look, and there is about an 8-foot brown bear sitting on 2 feet, barking at me. And I panicked. And so I instantly that fight or flight takes over, and I couldn't remember in the moment. Now, black bear, do you make noise or do you sit still? Brown bear, do you make noise? My flight took off, so I just ran as fast as I could, straight sideways from that animal. Fortunately, he didn't chase me, and frankly, if he wanted me, he could. They can run 35 miles an hour,
right.
And it would have not worked out so well. So I went as far as I could. I finally just collapsed, and I said, okay, it's over, and have me, I'm yours. And it didn't chase me. So I composed myself, sat there for about 15 minutes, shaking like a leaf, and then climbed the rest of the way up. So I get up by the outfitter, and I said, you're not going to believe. He goes, you're not going to believe this. So what had happened, this bear had just totally eaten the caribou and actually dug a hole in the shale rock on the side of this mountain and buried the remains of it and was watching it. So the good part was I was heading up towards that, and it was basically just trying to cut me off from getting at its meal. And so it turned out that that bear had been watching that. So I get up to the outfitter, and I instantly grabbed my gun because I was not going to let that happen again. And I was talking to him about it, taking some pictures of this beat up caribou. And I look up, and about 80 yards up, here's this bear again. And it did what's called a false charge. It came running towards us, got to about 30, 40 yards away, running full speed at us. And I held my gun, and I was shaking like a leaf. And I didn't have to shoot. He stopped, took off, and was gone.
Did you shoulder it?
This it was not bear season at the time,
okay.
So I had to hold up. There was no way I was not shooting if this thing kept coming. But he stopped.
Right.
But that same trip, and I'll just briefly, we were going on a river, and it had rained so much, so the water was just rushing, and there were logs and tree branches coming down the river. And we were at this one spot where I was in the front of this. It was about a 16-foot boat. The outfitter was in the back driving the boat, and a tree branch hit him, and he flipped out of the boat. And this is probably 35-degree water rushing. All of a sudden, the outfitter's gone. I'm in the front of the boat and panicked.
Just like you
I'm just
in
like,
front of the boat?
and it's like, what? Oh my! And so I had to jump to the boat and stop it, and then steer it down to get up to him as he's going down river. We ended up pulling off and made that a camp, and he had to obviously take everything. It was ice cold water, so we built a big fire, ended up fishing the night. I caught some Arctic grayling, which was really cool because I never caught a couple of salmon, and we made camp. But I thought in that moment, I just lost my outfitter, and I'm hundreds of miles away. It was just crazy. It was insane. So when you ask, that is by far my most memorable hunting experience ever. I ended up on the day before the end of the trip, harvesting a huge bull elk that actually made the Boone and Crockett. But it was after so many days of rain and other challenges and just killing ourselves out there. So that by far and away was my most memorable hunt.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's so cool. It's so cool. I can't even imagine just like looking up and seeing a bear.
Oh yeah, man. It was very, very scary. Yeah. Lots of adrenaline going through.
Yeah. See, I don't hunt, but I would love to start. And so
well, hey, you're welcome. We can do it. We won't start with Alaska though.
Probably not a good idea.
No, maybe some cushier hunts.
Yeah. Do you ever watch? I don't know if you've got Netflix or anything that you watch. Yeah. Do you ever watch Meat Eater?
I actually put it on my saved a number of weeks ago, but I've honestly never watched the show. But I have a friend that said that's a really, really neat show.
Yeah, well, I just started watching like a week or two ago, and I've probably made it through 8 episodes. And they had a guy from Wisconsin on like a couple. The one I watched at lunchtime today. There was a guy from Wisconsin, and he's sitting up there in Alaska looking around, and he goes, "Well, I don't want to shoot anything yet." And the outfitter looks at him and goes, "Why?" He goes, "Because after this, I'm just going back and looking at cornfields." He's like, "We got to take a couple of days. We can't shoot anything yet. We got to take a couple of days and enjoy this first before we get the plane back out here."
There's something to be said. Again, that's part of the journey, right? And being out there, and it's almost there's a little bit of sadness if it happens too early in your process, because it is about a lot more than just harvesting an animal.
And I've never been out into the wilderness in Alaska, but just being around like Kenai and Wasilla down there on the southern end, and just like looking up into the mountains, and having been like, we were at what's that big? There's like a big ski resort up there, Alaska or something like that. Okay. And so being up into the mountains a little bit, but not too far, and just see dipping your toe in the water, but seeing how beautiful that was, I can only imagine.
It's just like. So massive, and you can't even hunt without being with a licensed outfitter up there, because there's so much that can go wrong, and it's just so big that it really, that's part of the appeal to it. I think you are out there, and you are on your own, and frankly, if something happens or you do have issues, you got to figure it out, because there's nobody going to help you, and so there's something about that is I think a little bit of the intrigue as well. Yeah. But just seeing the majesty of the creation is amazing. Yeah.
So have you ever done any big game hunting like in the lower 48 at all?
I've done some hunts where I've done a wild boar hunt. I've done some elk hunting. I did a bison hunt, and I did. That's cool. So I've had experiences in kind of some of the West states. I went to Wyoming and did a pronghorn antelope hunt, which was really fun, because you're shooting really long distance compared where in Wisconsin, as a deer hunter, most of your shooting is 70, 100 yards. When you're out west in a place with no trees and trying to harvest an antelope, you're shooting several hundred yards oftentimes. And so that was just an interesting experience as well. Yeah. Different kind of terrain, different country.
Cool. Well, so when you say boar hunting, you talking like Texas style, or you're in a helicopter?
This was pretty simple. I was actually down in Florida one weekend, and closing down our condo, and I was a little bit bored, which it happens to me pretty easy. And I just went online and I started looking for hunting and outfitters, and I found an outfitter in Florida, not far from where we were, that does wild boar hunting, and so it's about as tame, it's nothing like Alaska. So it's flat. We hunted on stands, and so was really super easy. It's hard. You almost can't really call it a hunt.
Have you heard about these guys out? I think it's Montana or maybe the Dakotas, where like they have bars where you go out like on a back patio of the bar and they give you like an AK-47 and you shoot prairie dogs.
I have.
Have you heard of that?
Yeah. I've never done any of that, but
it just sounds crazy. It just sounds crazy. But I suppose when you have a problem, you have a problem.
That's right.
Might as well monetize.
Too funny. Yeah. That's the same with the boars too. A lot of the farmers they want to get rid of them.
Yeah. All right, dude. Okay, so what do you do when you're not hunting and you're not doing business? What else?
Well, we as a family do a lot of things together. Now, I'm at a place in my life which is a blessing and a challenge in that my dad passed several years ago, and my mom has Alzheimer's. She's a woman that was incredible, and I tell her that there's nobody that has been more giving and caring and supportive in my entire life, and has put herself through. And so both Tammy and I spend a lot of time visiting her and helping take care of her. She's in a memory care facility. On the other side, my father-in-law unfortunately has had a stroke and is fighting debilitating effects from that, 24/7 care. And mother-in-law is a saint, beyond a saint, taking care of him. And so Tammy and I try to spend it's probably 20 hours a week between those things with our family, and it's a joy and a blessing and a privilege to be able to help in the small way that we are. And I realize it's nothing compared to what our family has done for us and all the things that they've given us. But beyond that, we have been blessed to be able to do a lot of travel, and we have made it a point to try to give those experiences because of those blessings that we have to our kids. And so every couple of years recently, we've done some pretty big trips, and our kids have all been bitten with the travel bug many years before and have done a lot. But for example, a couple of years ago, we took all three daughters and son-in-laws and granddaughter to Costa Rica and visited 3 different parts of the country. In another week, we've got 15 of our family going to Croatia, which we've never been to. But one of my sister-in-laws has a lot of family from there, and so my middle daughter, who's just a travel nut, always is looking for great deals, and she found an unbelievable deal on British Airways, and somehow in about half hour got us all to commit to go. And so now we got this, but we've been able to do a lot and make memories and share time together. We've gone on ski trips. We've gone overseas. We've really been. My middle daughter Nikki taught English in China for a semester, and we took a whole family trip, went over to China and then to Japan. As long as we were that far and going to be jet lagged out of our minds, we decided let's go see Tokyo as well. And so that travel and being able to spend time with family is really the biggest thing I do outside of the work in church. And then, as I shared with you before, I just love learning. So I go down that internet rabbit hole that we have, which they say everything on the internet's true, right?
Yeah, every last word.
so I kind of dive into things to learn, and so anything from podcasts to new ideas and business opportunities, you name it. But kind of between those things, it makes life pretty full.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as a big game hunter, what does your diet look like?
Well, my diet has nothing to do with.
I know the meat from your harvest.
What I did in Alaska, for example, with the moose, this city, or you can't call it. It's not even a city. It's not even a village. Ekwok, where we ended up, was literally about 35 people really Eskimos in this little village that live off of their game. And I was fortunate to be able to harvest an animal, and that's about a 1,700-pound animal. So what I did is I took a couple of back straps to make some meat burgers off of, and I donated 90% or more of that animal to that village, and they were just so appreciative because that's going to feed them for a long time. And similarly, I did that with most of my out-of-state animals. I just think it's an opportunity to give back. So there was, when I did the boar hunt, when I did the antelope hunt, there was food shelters locally that, because those were areas that there were a lot of hunting and outfitters, that they had found places that could take that. And so I was able to donate that. So I always made it a point to try enough to be able to taste it, but give the rest away to people that could use it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so it's fun.
Right. Yeah. Well, to ask the question, you don't look like you're, an old guy. So.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I've got kids that keep me young, and I'm certainly not in the shape that I want to be, but I've always been athletic and focused on trying to lead a relatively healthy lifestyle. We do, my wife and I do a tremendous amount of walking, and we put in a lot of miles, and we try to eat, fairly high protein, low carb diet overall. There's times of stress that all goes out the window, and the weight comes on, and the carbs come into the play. But there's my kids are very healthy eaters, and so we've done that. And then just the focus on doing things that are good physically. I made a goal of mine that when I was going to turn 55, that I wanted to run a marathon. And so I signed up for the Lakefront Marathon that leaves Grafton and ends up at the lakefront the beginning of the year that I was going to turn 55. And I spent about 9 months running, and not by runner standards, but running to the point that I could be comfortable that I could run 26.2 miles without stopping. And so I finished that. That was a very fun thing for me. But my kids have generally been very athletic. My oldest daughter was a very good gymnast. She actually made the U.S. gymnastics team for 3 different years, and she ended up going to the University of Florida on a gymnastics scholarship. And the other 2 daughters both did gymnastics as young kids, and then track and just generally fairly athletic family. And my wife was a gymnastics and a dance coach, and so that kind of stuff resonated with our family. So we try to keep health as a little part of that, and want to be able to be vibrant and strong, hopefully for a number of years yet.
Awesome. All right, as we wrap up here, anything, any last words, anything you want to share or that we haven't gotten to?
I don't know that anything particular comes to mind, other than that I encourage all the young people listening to really be true to their faith, to be in the Word, to be able to experience God's creation. A lot of what we talked about is that journey, right? We're here for purpose to serve our Lord. We've got an incredible creation in front of us. We've got opportunities. So look at family, look at faith, look at being in the Word, look at all the incredible things that God gives us, and keep those as your base and operate from there. And life is incredible. Not that we're not going to have amazing challenges as well, because we all do. Every day we go through hardship, and there's times in our life that are super difficult, but we've got a God that loves us and is going to carry us through and not give us any more than we can handle, and that has given us so many blessings. If we can just focus on those blessings, life will be good, and what we have to look forward to is incredible.
Awesome. Well, congratulations on your future newest grandchild.
Yeah, exciting.
40 years of marriage. All kinds of awesome things going on. Thanks for spending time with us.
I'm enjoying it and enjoyed it immensely. Thank you for what you're doing. This is great.
Very cool. If you want to get in touch with Ed, what's the best way to do it?
Well, you can find me on the social medias. Not that I do a whole lot there, but you can look up my name, Ed Carrow, Carow, on Facebook. I'm also on LinkedIn. I would admit to you, I don't do much. I never post on it. I have it because
Right.
when you're in business, you're supposed to have
Right.
it. So I do.
That's what all the cool kids are doing, so.
Yeah, and then so between Facebook, and then my email is ed@jacksonstreetholdings.com, all lowercase. So you can always find me there, and I think that has my cell phone number on. I'm pretty readily available and accessible, and if there's anybody on this spiritual journey that would love to chat more, I'm happy to help out any way I can.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate you being here. Thank you for listening to the Gird Up Podcast. If you like what you're hearing on our podcast, make sure you're sharing it with friends and family, men in your life who you think need to hear our message. You can find us on social media, on Facebook under the Gird Up Podcast, and there's a Gird Up community as well there where you can interact with other men on the journey toward Christian manhood. You can find us on Instagram as girdup_like_a_man. If you'd like to help us bring our message to more men just like you all around the world, you can hit up our Patreon account. Type in www.patreon.com/girdup. And finally, please leave a 5-star rating or review on whatever platform you use to listen to our podcast, whether it's iTunes or Spotify. What that does is it helps us get more attention in the podcast world and bring more men to our message. Thank you again for listening to our podcast. Thank you for all the ways you support us and help spread the word. Until next time, go gird up and be the man that God created you to be.